Hello once again, it's tubalcain, Mr. Pete 222, your humble YouTube shop teacher. Thank you for joining me. And this is tips number 486, entitled All About 14-Inch Bandsaws, or I might subtitle it, A Tale of Two Bandsaws. So, stay with me and let's get started. This will be a series of videos on the bandsaw. I'm not sure how many, but this particular one is just an introduction to the 14-inch saw. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about the old ones and the new ones, their frailties, their strong points, and all of that good stuff. And I do have two 14-inchers. They probably are 25 or 30 years apart in manufacture. I did have an older one, like Jimmy DeResta shows, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I got rid of that because I had too many bandsaws. In fact, I have one too many right now. These are wood cutting bandsaws, and in fact I have a 14-inch metal cutting of a different manufacturer, and I'll talk about that in the next video. But ultimately what I want to get to here is converting these into, or one of them, into a metal cutting bandsaw, at least temporarily, because we have a lot of metal workers out there, and in general the metalworking bandsaws are very expensive. Rockwell Delta sold this in two models, a wood cutting and then a wood cutting slash metal cutting that had two different speeds on it. So I do not have one of those to show you, so I'm going to convert this in the next video. But let me talk all about these and compare the two right now. Now the reason I have two is that I would keep a 1/4-inch blade in one and a 3/8 wide blade on the other, and originally a 1/2 inch wide in the third one, but all that was unnecessary. And in fact, the one on the right here has been in storage for about 5 years because I had that Logan lathe set up in this exact position. I have no room for it. So all right, let's talk about Jimmy for a minute. As you know, Jimmy is a friend of mine. We met several times, and he signed my bag some time ago, so I rather cherish that. But I'm going to cut real quick to my computer and show you a recent video that Jimmy put on along with a friend of his, where they had resurrected or redone one of the real old ones. Now the old ones were marked Delta Milwaukee. Then it became, for many years, Rockwell Delta, or just Rockwell, I guess, and then finally just Delta, as they were bought out over and over. And I don't know if they're still making these or not, but they tended to cheapen them as they went along the line. Well, let's take a look at the computer real quick. Here's Jimmy with his friend, and they had just finished redoing this. They did not repaint it, they just put like a clear coat on it. And the title of this video, if you want to look at it, is DeResta Bandsaw Resto with Hand Tool Rescue. And notice, I may have misspoken a few moments ago, but the badge on this one is Delta Milwaukee, and they made these for many years under that badge. And there's quite a few differences, although it's essentially the same machine. I do want you to note here that this arm here is tubular and hollow in nature rather than the way it is on my bandsaws, and I did have one like that. But be sure and watch this video. And why is it I can't get 150,000 people to look at mine? All right, I'm going to do a little study here with some old Delta catalogs and show you what they had in the catalogs. You can skip through this if you don't like it. This is the 1940 Delta catalog, in kind of poor condition, and it's rather thin compared to the later ones. But there is a full page and a following page also of the original Delta, probably about like what Jimmy had. And it was available only in wood cutting then. But notice the open stand. They sold many different stands for it over the years. This is an open one with the motor below. Came with a work light, and many of the parts are the same. Again, the tubular type casting for an arm. Skipping ahead, this is the 1954 Delta Milwaukee. See, they changed the name. Catalog. And in the previous one, it just said Delta. It did not mention Delta Milwaukee. But down at the bottom, they are already a division of Rockwell Manufacturing. And this catalog is quite a bit thicker than the previous one that I showed you. And here it is again, wood cutting, but it also says available as metal cutting. And it is available with the open stand or a closed stand, and believe it or not, that stand is cast iron, hollow cast iron, and I have seen those stands also used on some of their other machines. What a heavy base that was, and what quality. Now the 1958, and it's called Delta Rockwell, and notice this logo. Again, that's 1958, much thicker catalog with several pages devoted to the Delta bandsaw. There it is again with both bases. Notice that they use a switch that is mounted on the motor with a rod that came up and turned it on and off. And they call it here, again, wood and metal. And there is more information on the facing page, and they do not show the metal cutting attachment, the gearbox, but they talk about it briefly. And apparently they changed the design on that several times over the years. And at this time, in this catalog, they're also showing their large 20-inch wood cutting bandsaw. I don't believe that was ever available as a metal cutting, but my brother did own one of those for a while, and he bought it from a grade school, a junior high. All right, I guess that's quite enough on the history lesson here, but in one of these catalogs they talked about the wheels and said they were magnesium. So apparently the older wheels were magnesium. I don't know if they still are. I doubt it, because it would cost too much. All right, let me talk about this drill press. I bought it in approximately 1977, and I bought it from J.C. Penney, of all places. And I forgot what I paid for it. I just don't remember. It's probably written down someplace. I do have the manual. But there are several things that I like about it. Originally, I did not like the base, that is the stand that it's on. And the bottom two shelves I added so that I have places to put some of my clutter. Otherwise, it was a rather open stand. And the motor is mounted off to the side here, and that's going to be very handy for the conversion that I'm going to make, because my gearbox and whatever can be right there, and easy to install, easy to talk about. Notice that I made a roll-around stand on the bottom. It's a three-wheeler. It sets very low to the ground, so it doesn't really raise the saw up much. And I copied that off of something, but it allows me to move it around and sweep and things like that. Bad features. It is a half-horse motor, but I can't believe that they put open motors on there where the dust goes right into them, but I really haven't had any trouble with it. It is not a capacitor start. That probably would have been a better feature, but it's not really a problem. I just don't like the idea. The switch is a simple toggle switch, which you think would be prone to failure, but I never had any problem with that either. I have a light there on a magnet that I can move around. I think they sold a work stand. I did buy at extra cost that fence. Well, the fence isn't on there, but you can see the fence guard there, or guides, or whatever you want to call them. And that's the other thing I wanted to show you here on both of the bandsaws is that frame is now webbed. It is not hollow. The hollow ones would have required a core and been quite expensive to build and cast when you think about it. Jimmy's has the riser on there. They were all available with a riser that gave you extra depth so that you could do resawing. Notice that the other model also is open like that, and I don't like it, but that was the basis also, and probably the what caused me in Peterson Products to have that type of frame on the little bandsaw, the 10-inch bandsaw. By the way, the Delta 10-inch bandsaw was shown in one of those catalogs. I elected not to bother showing you that. At some point, probably in the 80s or 90s, they got away from these horrible guards that are held on with two little thumb screws. That's just a terrible design. It takes so long to get them off compared to the hinged covers on the more modern. Now I'm going to do a little something here. I'm going to step to the side, turn the camera on, and I'm going to take the two guards off and lay them on the floor, and I want you to time me and see how long that takes. Always turn the power off or unplug your machine when you take the guards off. Here we go, time me. Okay, stop the timing. Now I want you to time me taking the guards off or opening the guards on this more modern one, and I'll tell you when to start the timing. Okay, start your watch right now. And done. Stop the watch. Now what a difference that makes. Notice the different design in the wheels also. Still 14-inch wheels, but apparently aluminum. I doubt if they're magnesium on the left-hand one. But what a difference it is with those guards. I just love them, and it really makes you dread changing blades when you have to take those guards off, and it will take much longer to put them back on than what it took me to take them off. This blade guard right here is now plastic where it was wood on the original one that Jimmy had. That seemed kind of cheap. Jimmy made a new one, but this seems cheap too, and you can see that it looks like it's warped and it is discolored with age, but yet it's still functional, so I don't really have a complaint about it as such. I'm at the back of the machine now, and this is the shaft that supports the top blade guide. And I want you to notice here that it is round, but it has a flat spot on it. Originally they were hexagon, like on Jimmy's. And matter of fact, there are vestiges of this because they weren't in the mood for changing the dies to die cast this piece, so you can still see the hex on there, I think. Can't you? So the bean counter said, no, you can't mix a hexagon hole up here. It costs way more than a round hole. And we'll just make this flat, and we'll do it super cheap. Now originally, all they had here to tighten this was this little thumb screw. This isn't the exact one, but that is the right size. That's what they had. Now it would vibrate loose. You could not get it tight enough unless you put a pliers on it or drilled a hole and used a ice pick or something to tighten it. So that was a total fiasco. But I think this is just so interesting, what I'm going to tell you now, and you have to refer to that DeResta video for this. But 30, maybe 35 years ago, I helped my friend Ron Draper do some plumbing. He taught drafting. And he couldn't do any plumbing, so he'd call on me all the time and pester me. So I went over there and we changed the faucet on his bathtub, and it was porcelain. So I took the old ones and made a casting. This is the casting, and that's 35 years ago. And I love it. It's round. You can get a grip on it. You won't cut yourself or any of that nonsense. But when you watch Jimmy's, you will see that he put a knob almost identical to this, but made of porcelain, and I think it either said hot or cold on there with a C or an H. And I thought, how could that happen? That 35 or 40 years later, somebody did the exact same thing that I did, other than they didn't cast it, they just used it as is. So I thought that was neat. This is, of course, the blade tensioning device here, and I never did like this because your knuckles hit. Even though they made this nice little depression here, your knuckles hit, or you had to come around to the back side of it, and I'll show you how they improved that on the other one. Another minor improvement that I made, I forgot all about it, but there was quite a bit of friction here where this screw came and hit the casting, so I just set, it's just sitting there by gravity, but it's held in by pressure now, a ball bearing that would reduce the friction. Just a little Petersonism. Looking down here, a very high quality die-cast zinc belt guard, double-sided. There's just no way that you could get your fingers into that belt. And this is zinc, it's not aluminum, really nice. That's a 4-inch pulley. I must have marked for some reason years ago. And there are no step pulleys on here, but a fellow probably, well, step pulleys wouldn't fit, I don't think, within the confines of this. This guard was probably used on some of their other machines as well. Now another thing that I did a long time ago, you can't tell it right here maybe, but that is an electrical handy box right there so that I could plug both the bandsaw and the work light into there, and I didn't have to run 2 cords over. So that's what that is, silly as it might be. Alright, let's turn our attention to this one. Again, I love those guards, but notice that already one of the knobs is missing right there. This was bought from a high school, but it was used in the art department, so it had almost no hours on it. It was darn near brand new when I got it. And I do like the switch, I like the position of it, and it looks like a better switch than that little toggle switch. One complaint I have with all the bandsaw companies, every one that I ever come across, is that they do not put the blade size on it. That has to be put on by the owner, and it's really the only important thing that there is, and they fail to do that. Just how much trouble would it be for them to have a little decal or something for that? So I know that has to have aggravated every man that has ever owned a bandsaw. And if it hasn't, you are a very tolerant person. Here's the fence. I just dug it out, but I have to confess I haven't used it in this millennia. And of course the slot takes the standard 3/4 inch Delta or other brand miter gauge, so that's nice. I have this temporarily just on a little bit of a wooden dolly with some casters so I can move it around and into storage. That's why that is there, but it raises it up about 2 inches. For 60 years, count them, 60, Delta did not care about the sawdust or how it would escape from the saw, but finally they put a little chute in here. I don't know if I've ever used it, but a vacuum cleaner I guess fits on there, and this will swing down. I think it needs to be swung down to adjust the blade, so that's kind of a handy little feature, isn't it? Note that now we have a sheet metal belt guard back here. That's in the shadows, but very poorly mounted. It needs another bracket at the top, so that turns the machine into a rattle trap. Here's a little improvement that I like, and I mentioned it a few moments ago, that they extended the shaft here so that you can grab a hold of this blade adjusting knob from the front side without reaching around. However, you would have to come around and read the little gauge right here, but at least your thumbs do not hit the back of the guard. You got free movement there, but it is a plastic knob, which is a minor disappointment to me. Well, finally somebody in engineering said, no, that is wrong. A thumb screw is wrong. We're putting a knob on there, albeit a plastic one, so at least you got some leverage there. But notice the design change here. We still have a round shaft, but we have a V in it, which should more accurately locate this as far as the twisting of it is concerned when you raise and lower it. So I think that's an improvement, but note that they still have the vestiges of the hexagon down here. That would have been an expensive die, I suppose, to remake, or maybe they had other reasons. I'm just deducing that. Also notice that this is a different casting, so they made different patterns on this machine. I don't know what that boss is for, possibly a light, as compared to the other one. That's probably irrelevant, but at some point maybe they changed foundries or wore out the patterns and had to make new ones. Do you recognize this? Yes, it's the ubiquitous Diecast zinc knobs from Delta that were used on virtually all their machines, and they used them underneath the older saw there. Perhaps you can see them for the table adjustments, but no. Could they continue to use them on this model? No, cheap plastic. So that's a pouting disappointment when they make changes like that. At least it is to me, and let me know if it is to you. In all the years I've owned this, I've never had this cover off, and there's also a louvered cover on the front side, you will notice, so I think this is pretty well built. Nice. There is a nice looking motor. It is capacitor start. It looks heavier than the other one, and that's an enclosed fan cooled motor, so that is a nice motor. I don't know the horsepower, but it is certainly sufficient for the job, and I will clean that out real well as long as I got this open. But it's fairly well sealed because there's not a lot of sawdust in there at all, but that's nice, and it's wired for 110, and there's a nice system there for mounting the motor that allows you to adjust it both up and down and in and out for whatever different motor frame that you might have. So that's pretty well done. As you know by looking at Jimmy's bandsaw, originally these were made in Milwaukee along with their extensive power tool line up there by Delta, but at some point the plants were moved down south. It was Alabama or someplace down there, I think. Probably even for the one on the right here, but they might be out of business now or be importing them, because you could go to Menards or any box store or Grizzly or whatever and buy some knockoff of this for 1/2 or less the price of the Delta, so they just absolutely could not compete. So that'll either drive you out of business or force you into doing the same, meaning manufacturing overseas or importing it by just putting a new decal on it. Well, enough of that, but other than these are really very well built. They got double bearings here on the top wheel, and then double bearings there in the housing for the lower wheel. And I'm not going to talk any more about that. That might be covered in the following video. But again, my intentions now in the follow-up video or videos is to take this motor off and slow it down to 100 feet per minute or so, and I have tentative plans of doing that 3 ways, unless it's a failure, and then I'll only do it a half a way and I'll quit, or maybe not even show the video. But since Delta sold it that way with a gear changer on it, a planetary, they use different systems, as I told you. Probably whoever they could buy it from cheaper if they didn't make their own. But I'm going to take that motor off, and I'm going to, or I'll leave the motor on actually for the first one, and if the pull gear fits on there, I'm going to use the pull gear on there and see what kind of speeds I get. Now I may have to monkey with the pulleys and change pulleys and things like that, and belts, but we'll see how that cuts, or if it works, or if it has the rigidity in the frame and everything, you know, to do metal cutting, but yet they would have used the same frame in their metal cutting. In some of their, like the one my brother had, if this guide was off here, there was a metal tag there that said wood/metal. And then my further plans are, I have a motorized right angle gearbox that I might put on there, and as a last resort, and I think it'll have torque for this, I was planning on putting the DC motor on. So that's why I'm saying that it might take several videos to cover all of that. And I am also going to talk about my Boyce Crane machine over there and what I did to that. You know, that is a 2-speed machine. That is, it'll run at a slow speed for metal and a higher speed for wood. But these saws probably can be used for cutting aluminum at the relatively high speed, and I might show that in the following video. So again, this was more of a history lesson and just a video to talk all about these and explain the differences, and I hope some of this was fun for you, an historical lesson, blah blah blah. I'll conclude this video now, and this is tubalcain saying so long for now, and be sure and watch the follow-up videos and the hundreds and hundreds of other videos I've already done and intend to do in the future if my vigor holds up. So long for now.